All right, good morning. So, sorry I'm a little late. Had to go out and shovel first, and then we could come back and do some math. So, first thing I wanted to say was, looked like most of all of you who actually did your assignment last time, and a lot of you did. Appreciate that. Did a really good job of the solving by factoring, so that was really good. So, I want to move into quadratic equations that can't be solved by factoring. Hence, we have the quadratic formula. So just a little refresher here. There are two ways to solve a quadratic equation. I should just put quadratic equations there. One is by factoring. Just got done doing that. Two is by the quadratic formula. And hopefully most of you remember the quadratic formula. If you'd like, well, whether you like it or not, I'm actually going to include a video of a stupid song, which is maybe the way some of you learned it. But for those of you who are in my class, I told you a little story last year about a negative boy who was trying to decide yes or no whether he wanted to go to a radical party, but he was square and he missed out on 4 awesome chicks. And the party was over at 2 a.m. So, if that little story is helpful to you, great. If you want to remember the song, great. If you just want to memorize the formula, great. So, and you'll remember from back in the day that a is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, c is the number without an x, and we're always, of course, set equal to 0. So, again, I just want to remind you that there are two ways to solve quadratic equations. Actually, we could solve by graphing and completing the square, but we're not going to. One is by factoring, one is by quadratic, and I just want to compare the two in this particular problem right here. So this problem's easy. This is totally factorable, and we're going to solve by factoring. And then we're going to solve this very easy problem using the quadratic formula. And again, as I generally do, start you off with something easy, maybe even something that you already know, so that we can then launch into the new stuff for the day and things that are a little more challenging. So we're going to start off with something nice and easy here, solving this quadratic equation by factoring. And we take a look at this and we realize, all right, this is a basic trinomial. There's a 1 in front of the x squared. So we just got to ask the two-part question. What two numbers multiply to make positive 24, add to make negative 10, and those numbers are obviously the numbers are negative 6 and negative 4, and so we have x minus 6 and x minus 4. And the solutions are 6 and 4. Easy enough. So, assuming the quadratic formula works correctly, we should get 6 and 4 if we do the quadratic formula on this. And we're going to. So, we're going to solve the very same problem using the quadratic formula. So, we need to identify what are a, b, and c, and actually I'll also remind you of the formula. So, negative b plus or minus. The negative boy is going to miss out on the 4 awesome chicks. Party's over at 2 a.m. No parties now in this era of social distancing. So anyway, so we have a equals 1, b equals negative 10, and c equals 24, right? 1, negative 10, 24. Let me just plug those numbers right in. So we have negative b, but b is already negative, so we make it into a positive. So we got 10 plus or minus, it should be 10, square root of b squared, so negative 10 squared is 100, right? Negative 10 times negative 10, minus 4 times 1 times 24 over 2 times 1, which of course is just 2. So then we have 10 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 1 times 24 is 96. 100 minus 96 is 4 over 2. And of course the square root of 4 is 2. So we got 10 plus or minus 2 over 2. And we see here we actually have two answers. We have 10 plus 2 over 2 and 10 minus 2 over 2. So we'll do them both. So 10 plus 2, of course, is 12. Divided by 2 is 6. And 10 minus 2 is 8. Divided by 2 is 4. And those are your two solutions, which are the two solutions we came up with before. So the quadratic formula works great, and obviously you would not use it on this kind of problem right here. This is definitely a factoring problem, but just wanted to use the quadratic formula on that, on the easy problem, before we get to some more challenging problems. This one is not any more challenging. This one is also factorable. Just another quick practice on this one. So, actually, I'm going to skip the practice on this one. You guys are fun on this. So, let's move on to something a little trickier. So here is a quadratic equation in which the leading coefficient is not 1, it's 2. It's okay, no big deal. Same formula, same procedure, all the same. So we'll just start working this right through the formula that we're not even going to write down because you already know it. So -5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared, which is 25, minus 4 times 2 times -3. All of that is over 2. Now in this case, times 2, so it's not always 2 in the denominator. Sometimes it's, well, in this case, 4, right? It's 2 times that number. So then we got -5 plus or minus the square root of, and we got 4 times 2 is 8 times -3 is -24. So we got 25 minus -24 over 4. And we have -5 plus or minus. Well, subtracting a negative, of course, we know is like adding a positive. So 25 and 24 makes 49 over 4. And we have -5 plus or minus. Square root of 49, of course, is 7. Divide by 4. And again, we just do the work, the two answers here. So -5 plus 7 is 2. 2 over 4, of course, is 1/2. Totally okay to have fractions. And -5 minus 7 is -12. Divided by 4 is -3. So those are your two answers. All right. So as always, it's important for you to try one on your own to make sure that you know how to do it by yourself. So you'll notice this one's equal to -2, but of course we know that all quadratic equations, the first step is to make sure it's set equal to 0. So you're going to practice that right here. So please take a moment right now, seriously, pause the video. Please do it. Pause the video, do the problem, and we'll check back with you in a minute. So hopefully you paused the video and you actually did this because, well, I'm not going to demonstrate the push-up show right now, but you know the push-up routine that I do in class. So if you watch me do push-ups, I'll get nice and strong. You, not so much. So just adding that 2 over. And we have that, and now we have our A and our B and our C, and we just plug those right into the formula. So we got -5 plus or minus the square root of 25, which is obviously 5 squared, minus 4 times 3 times 2, 4 times A times C, over 2 times 3, 2 times A, 2 times 3. And again, hopefully this is all the same work that you have. So 4 times 3 is 12. Times 2 is 24. 25 minus 24 is 1 over 6. And of course the square root of 1 is 1. And then we have our two answers. So we got -5 plus 1, which is -4. And -4 over 6 is -2/3. Make sure you reduce your fractions. And -5 minus 1 is -6. Divided by 6 is -1. And hopefully you got those two answers. All right. Now, I want to show you one other kind of special case here before we move on to the real reason we're doing the quadratic formula, which is when we have problems that are not factorable. So just one special case here. So, so here we have a basic trinomial, and we have A is 1, B is -6, and C is 9. We're just going to plug those right into the formula. So a negative B is going to be a positive 6, plus or minus B squared. So -6 squared is 36, minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 9, and over 2 times 1, which of course is just 2. Then we have 6 plus or minus the square root of, so 4 times 1 is 4, times 9 is 36, so 36 minus 36 is 0, and we haven't seen that before. So square root of 0, of course, is just 0. And 6 plus 0 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. And 6 minus 0 is still 6, divided by 2 is still 3. So really we have two answers, but they're both the same. So that's what happens when we have 0 inside the square root. So just wanted to show you that little kind of special case, which, still gets you a pretty reasonable answer, but it is a little different and a little special, and, no need to worry if you get 0 in the square root. Okay, now for the real reason why we're doing the quadratic formula, for problems that are not factorable. And if we tried to factor this using the master product rule, it wouldn't work. So we need to jump right into the quadratic formula. So again, just using our little formula, I'm just going to remind you of the formula in case it's not set there yet, even though I skipped in the last problem. So we're just going to plug in the b where it belongs. So we got -5 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 25, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is -2. And all of that is over 2 times a, and a being 2, so 2 times 2 is 4. And then we have -5 plus or minus the square root of, so 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times -2 is -16. So just making sure we got enough room here. Yeah, so we'll do that, that's fine. So 25 minus -16 over 4. We'll actually do the rest of it over here. And subtracting negatives like adding a positive, so we have 25 plus 16, or 41. So we have -5 plus or minus the square root of 41 over 4. And of course the square root of 41 is not simplifiable because there are no perfect squares that go into 41. So there we have our answer, which again is really just two answers. It's -5 plus the square root of 41, whatever that is, divided by 4. And it's -5 minus the square root of 41 divided by 4. And those are your two answers right there. Looks kind of ugly, but you know, it's the way it is. So here's one for you to try all by your lonesomes. So again, you're just going to plug this right into the formula, and it's going to be just like this problem right here, on unsimplifiable square root. So it's already set equal to 0, so you don't need to worry about that. So please take a moment, as always, really pause the video, do the push-ups, get strong, and pause the video right now and do the problem, and I'll be right back. All right, and we're back. So again, we're just going to rip this right through the quadratic formula. So here is our b, which is -1. So a -1 is a +1. And then we're going to do b squared, which is 1, because -1 squared, minus 4 times 3 times -3. All of that is over 2 times a, which is 2 times 3, which is 6. So we get 1 plus or minus the square root of. So 4 times 3 is 12, times -3 is -36, and 1 minus -36 is like 1 plus 36, or 37 over 6. And that is all we can do. 37 is a prime number, so we can't actually find any perfect squares that go into it. Okay, 2 more problems to go, and then we're done. So these both involve some simplifying of square roots. Hopefully you remember how to do that. And again, I've made sure that we set this equal not to 0, so that we have to remember to actually not make sure we set it equal to 0. So our first step, of course, is make sure it's equal to 0. And we got 2x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. And then we just plug all the numbers into the quadratic formula. And again, hopefully we have that nailed down by now. So a is 2, b is 4, c is -3. So we got -4 plus or minus b squared, which is 4 squared, so 16, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is -3. All that is over 2 times a, so 2 times 2 is 4. So we got -4 plus or minus the square root of, let's see what the work is here. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times -3 is -24. 16 minus -24 is 16 plus 24. So we got 16 plus 24 over 4 equals -4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 24 happens to be 40 over 4. And we know that the largest perfect square that goes into 40 is 4. So we get -4 plus or minus square root of 4 times 10 over 4. And then we have -4. And the 4 is square rootable, so we take the square root and put it on the outside. plus or minus 2 root 10 over 4. And man, we are really running out of room here. And then we look at these numbers right here. The negative 4, the 2, and the 4. And we see that there's a number that goes in all three of them, and of course that number is 2. And so we're going to divide everybody by 2. And remember, we don't cut the french fries in half. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, plus or minus root 10 over 2. And there is our final answer. So hopefully we actually talked about cutting the french fries in half when we simplify these square roots. We don't divide the 10 by the same number we divided all these guys by. So no cutting the 10 in half, also leave the 10 as it is. Okay, so please take a moment. This is the last thing we have to do. Pause the video, do this problem, do your push-ups, and get strong. So take a moment, pause it right now, do it. All right, so hopefully you did your push-ups. Starting to get jacked. We're going to add 3 to both sides. So we get 2x squared plus 6x plus 3 equals 0. And we plug all the numbers in. Negative 6 plus or minus. Now I'm just ripping through this because you've already done it. 36 minus 4 times 2 times 3. All of that is over 2 times 2 or 4. Negative 6 plus or minus the square root of. 4 times 2 is 8. Times 3 is 24. 36 minus 24 is 12 over 4. And we got negative 6 plus or minus. So square root of 12 is, we can use 4 to reduce that. So that's the largest perfect square that goes into it. And of course the square root of 4 is 2. So we got 2 root 3 over 4. And again, 2 goes into all those guys there. 2 goes into here and here and here. So we're going to divide everybody by 2. We don't need to write the 1, so we just write square root of 3 over 2. And we are done. So there's the whole lesson. Hopefully that went well, and I'll have an assignment for you. And yeah, see you in 2 days.